Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by BKCW. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Be sure to tell us where you're checking in from. Get your questions in. Let us know what you're drinking. Don't forget it's Valentine's Day, fellas, so go get that late gift if you haven't already.
Do not forget that.
I was well prepared, way ahead of time.
Me too, for once.
My game opening script's been written for a while on this.
You got the first 25 plays in the book, huh?
Yeah, it's good.
Well, guys,
I gotta say this. I got flowers being delivered. So if y'all hear a doorbell ring and a dog bark, you know what's coming.
There you go.
There.
All right. Well, we got a whole lot to talk about this morning, guys, from combine invites, coaching changes, coaching news. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Bobby, I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, let's start with coaching news. Texas running backs coach Tashard Choice telling folks yesterday that he is headed to Detroit to become the Lions running back coach. This is a move that surprised us in many regards, because we thought that his dalliance with the NFL was over after turning down the Dallas Cowboys. But I am told that the Detroit Lions made a sweeter offer than the Cowboys. If you can imagine that, Jerry Jones not exactly paying his assistants as well as some other places. But long story short, it's a big loss for the Longhorns. And I wrote in today's article on TexasFootball.com, look, you could get over these, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, right? This is one of those, and Jerry and I have talked about it before. He's a guy that is a good recruiter, a good coach, and just a good vibe on the team. He helps Steve Sarkisian connect and create that culture. He will be missed as a Longhorn. That same time being said, he was never going to be the last running back coach ever at the University of Texas. So we have to move on and pick it up and go from there. There's some other off-field coaching news that's breaking as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. Jerry, you got some news on the combine?
Yeah. So I need to answer one question first. None. Just to put that out there. All right, but that was very funny, Zane Petty. So the NFL Combine released their list. Texas never released their list of players early like some other universities did. Miami, Rutgers, you saw a lot of them. NFL announced their entire Combine list yesterday. 14 Texas Longhorns on there. Obviously, you can see it, but I'll roll through it. Quinn Ewers at quarterback, Jaden Blue running back, Isaiah Bond and Golden at receiver, Gunnar Helm tight end, 4 offensive linemen, Banks, Connor, Majors, Cam Williams, two defensive linemen, Vernon and Alfred, edge, Barron Sorrell, and 2 defensive backs, Jade Barron and Andrew Makuba. So what that does, 14 guys invited to the Combine. I'm sticking with my probably 12 or 13 potentially Texas Longhorns drafted. I think it's going to be in that range for the NFL draft for Texas this year, which would eclipse last year, and keep Steve Sarkisian on that number he wanted. He wants Bobby. He said a couple of years ago, I believe it was at the Shrine Bowl, that he would like to see 8, 9, 10 NFL draft picks a year at Texas. He feels like if the Horns are doing that, then player development, recruiting, winning, all of that stuff's going to line up. And I think that absolutely is the case. And we'll talk about those guys. Bring your questions on those guys. We'll talk about some of those guys, maybe what they have to do at the Combine, who can elevate their stock at the Combine. Oh, not all guys can elevate their stock at the Combine. Some guys do have the potential to elevate their stock at the Combine, though. So it'll be interesting to talk about that a little bit. And then obviously Bobby mentioned Aaron Joe. Bobby sounds like he's going to be hired at the University of Texas in a scouting capacity, director of scouting. He is originally from Lakeland, Florida, and I'll let Bobby take it away. But I wanted to mention another guy with Florida ties. He played at Lake Gibson in Lakeland, Florida, back in the day before he played at Georgia Tech. So another guy with Southeast Florida ties on the Texas staff now.
Yeah, we mentioned Tashard Choice leaving Texas simultaneously. News breaking this morning that Aaron Joe will be the director of scouting. He's a former GM at Georgia Tech. It is as Brandon Harris, the GM at the University of Texas, continues to build his off-field staff and support staff. This is the second major hire he has made. Aaron Joe, the former GM at Georgia Tech, he also added, if you remember correctly, we talked about this on a prior show. He added Josh Dunson, the GM at Memphis, earlier this year. So Brandon Harris bringing in the GMs from both Georgia Tech and Memphis this offseason to work with him. Joe will be the director of scouting. He's a former offensive lineman that played at Georgia Tech, graduated there 2014, worked at most recently at Alabama before taking the role at Georgia Tech. Dunson, you've heard me talk about that. He's originally from Georgia, and he will be the senior director of player personnel at Texas. So a lot of work being done off the field. On the court last night, Lady Longhorns beat up on Kentucky. I mean, they didn't just beat them. That third quarter, Texas unleashed on Kentucky, winning 67-49 was the final. I tell you what, Jerry, the women showed that they are not just a good team. They are a potentially great team. Kentucky, number 8 in the country, and Kentucky couldn't stay on the court with them in the third quarter. It was clear the women and the inside game right now for that team, Kyla Oldacre and Taylor Jones, really working magic with Maddie Booker, also being a scoring threat. That trio right now is really working some teams overall. I think women going to go in and play LSU on Sunday for a chance to be kind of secure the lead in the SEC right now.
Yeah, I think the big thing is if they win on Sunday against Kim Mulkey, I think that Texas really does then have the inside track on a number 1 seed, and I think that's important. And then you just have to see in the NCAA tournament, you have to see it's going to be matchups are going to be huge. Like a Notre Dame may be a bad matchup for Texas. They won in South Bend. I'm not saying Texas can't win the game, but it's a matchup dependent team. And some people in Texas say everybody is, but there's some teams like UConn last year. It didn't matter who they played; they're better. But it's going to be matchup dependent for them. But they're going to be a favorite to go to the Final Four if they secure a 1 seed, as they should be. Playing really, they're playing. What they're doing is, I think they're close to maximizing Vic's style of play with this team, and I think that's the thing. Is there going to come a game for them where they're going to have to shoot the three well, or somebody's going to put 10 threes on them and really force their hand? That could potentially happen if you get up against a Notre Dame or somebody like that. There's probably a couple of teams out there from a matchup standpoint, but he's close to maximizing this team in his style of play. And I think anytime you do that, a team that plays to his style, fits his style, both ends of the court, I think they have a chance to do some big things. And look, I mean, the first step would be to get to that Final Four, to get over that hump, right, Bobby, and get to the Final Four. Vic's first Final Four at Texas. He went deep, played for a national title at Mississippi State. This team has the parts to do that. If they win Sunday, though, they definitely inside track for a 1 seed, and they will have earned it.
Men's baseball starts today as well up in Arlington, 7 o'clock against Louisville. That'll be their first official game of the season after all the alumni games and that sort of stuff, inter-squad games. They get started against Louisville. And then also, I think, Texas plays a little basketball tomorrow. Men take on Kentucky in Moody Center. And guys, I want to add this real quick. We're going to have another ticket giveaway courtesy of our friend Adam Lowy there. But first, before we get talking more about Tashard Choice, the NFL Combine invites, and more, I want to say thank you to our season-long sponsor of the Friday morning coffee and football. That's BKCW. All season long, you've heard us talk about how Longhorn-owned BKCW helps you escape the insurance trap. You know the drill. Renewal time rolls around. You scramble for quotes and end up stuck with a higher price. BKCW breaks that cycle. They equip you with a wide variety of tools like safety training programs and a dedicated risk consultant to save you time and make your employees safer and show insurance carriers that your business is a good fit. They'll dive deep into your past claims, assess risk, and deploy tools to make your company safer. With BKCW, the goal is simple: help make you and your employees safer so you can save money and hopefully experience fewer claims. If you want to learn more about what BKCW can provide to you and your business, go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com and get the support you deserve. Again, bkcw.com. Thank you for your sponsorship of On Texas Football.
All right, guys, going back to the combine for a moment, 329 invites went out. 105 of those came from the SEC. So I'm going to put up just the SEC numbers first here.
Yep.
Texas and Georgia both leading the way with 14, but pretty impressive as a conference to have nearly 1/3 of all invites.
Who's only got 3? I can't tell. I'm looking a little closer at that.
Tickle Me Elko and Brent Venables. So, but look, if you combine Oklahoma and A&M, they had one more than Arkansas. So there's that. If you want to play the 3+3 over 5 game.
Hey,
look, hey, South Carolina with 11, probably surprising to people. A lot of defensive players on that list. By the way, if you notice me looking over to the side screen for the last 5 minutes, I was counting up how many of those 329 combine invites Texas played against last year. Over 60. Over 60. So over 20% of those NFL combine invites are around that number. Texas actually played against on the schedule last year. Now, Ohio State probably had 16 of them, right? I think it was Ohio State's number 16.
15.
And Georgia
15.
had 4. Georgia, what was it?
15.
15. So there you go. So if you look at that, and I'm sure Michigan's right under Alabama's 9. They got to be right around there. So Texas played against the teams, 3 games against the teams with the most invitees. Twice against Georgia, once against Ohio State. And this is what I said last year. Everybody's like, oh, Texas schedule. They played against a bunch of great players. Even in the regular season, they played against a bunch of great players. You just go up and just go to NFL.com and look at that combine list and tell me Texas didn't play against the teams on the schedule. Can be misleading. Texas played against tremendous talent last year. They played against really good football players.
How about Florida with 9?
They lose a lot off that. They lose more off that team than people think.
I know that's what I was getting at. And when I saw that list, I was like, Florida with 9 is a big number. We'll see exactly how Billy Napier's done that. Texas starts SEC play with Florida in October of this year, I guess. My take on this is more in the big picture perspective, Jerry, as opposed to just the SEC or what have you. I wrote a little bit this morning. You know, it was only 2022, 3 years ago, when Texas had this many players drafted. 0. Okay. It was only a decade ago, 2014, when Texas had no players drafted. Now, last year, Texas had 11 players drafted. They didn't even have that many go to the combine last year, by the way. Now they're going to have 14 go to the combine. This is uncharted territory for Texas. I went back and looked at it. Even in the 80s, like at the 69-70 squads that won 2 national championships for Texas, they actually didn't have many players drafted off of those rosters back to back. They have one big year in, I think, 71 and a smaller year in 70. In the early 80s, they had a big year in 82 and a big year in 84, but not very big in 83. This is uncharted territory for Texas on back-to-back double-digit possible draft picks. I don't think Texas has ever done it before. I was trying to figure that out this morning before we came on air. It's just uncharted territory. And so when people ask me what direction is Texas headed, and they expect, oh, well, they're graduating heavily. Dude, they graduated heavily last year. They're going to graduate heavily again. They graduated heavily again this year. They're going to graduate heavily next year. You think Anthony Hill's coming back for a 4th year? You think, Ethan Burke's going to be gone. right? Trey Moore, gone. Michael Taft, gone. Manny Muhammad, probably gone. I can sit here and name Trey Wisner, probably gone. You can sit DJ Campbell, Cole Hudson. You're going to sit here and see this churn right now, I think, at Texas. That's pretty darn impressive.
I wanted to say this on the Texas having 4 offensive linemen. It may have surprised some people that maybe Hayden Connor was invited. If you look, though, as much as the Texas offensive line was talked about, both good and bad during the season, positively, negatively, whatever you want to say, 20 or 21 of the defensive linemen invited to the combine Texas played against this year, 20 or 21 of them. So those guys have tape against the best in college football last year, all the way through the season. And so it's again, I'm just going to go back to that. Texas, people may have talked about the schedule as far as to Texas ranking the teams that Texas played that weren't ranked. But Texas played against a bunch of bowl teams, eligible teams, by the way. But they played against a outstanding group of defensive linemen last season, all the way through the season. Texas offensive linemen have tape. When those NFL guys are breaking it down, every single one of those guys has tape against players invited to the combine, multiple players invited to the combine. So there's the good tape and the bad tape that these guys have against guys who are about to be drafted, and some of them really high in the NFL.
Blake, you're muted.
You're muted there. I saw this comment. Wanted to get y'all's take on it from Kyle. He said it surprised me that Silas Bolden wasn't invited.
I don't know, man. I mean, he did not get a lot of playing time at Texas. He's a return guy. For example, Keelan Robinson got drafted last year, right? As kind of a boutique player. But Keelan Robinson can be used that way as a running back. It's hard to find a spot for a wide receiver in that regard. Because I don't think Silas Bolden, while he could be a return guy in the NFL, I don't think he can play on special teams overall. Like, I don't think he can be a gunner. Keelan Robinson was a great gunner. So I don't know that it's overall surprising. I will say this. Jerry and I were talking about who we were off air the other day, who we were going to miss from this 2024 team. And Silas Bolden was one of those guys that we're going to miss that came first to mind, because he's always exciting when he's on the field and did something, good or bad at times, by the way. But then that play he made against Oklahoma still just kind of resonates in our brain, by the way. So good luck to Silas. Not surprised he was not invited.
Well, he may be. Look, there's some guys that, I don't want – P.J. Tucker had to go to Europe to play as a pro before he made it in the NBA. Silas Bolden very well may need to go to the Canadian League and tear it up for a little while. And even if he doesn't get drafted, doesn't mean you can't eventually end up in the league. But he'll also have a chance on a pro day to put up a low 4.3. And if he does that, we'll see what happens with him. But look, these guys can take different paths and get to where they ultimately want to be too. This about Silas Bolden. He'll go tear it up in the CFL. Can that lead him to the NFL? We'll have to see.
Yeah. And if it has anything to do with heart or work ethic, he'll succeed in whatever he does, by the way, in whatever he does. Another thing we need to mention real quick, Jerry, and I forgot to do this off the top. Last night, the Broyles Award came up. That is the award in college football for the nation's top assistant coach of the year. Pete Kwiatkowski, the University of Texas defense coordinator, was nominated for the award. He did not win it. Al Golden, the defensive coordinator of Notre Dame, who just took the Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator job, won the award. But I thought we would play this clip about a minute and a half of PK talking about the people around him making the defense what it was last year.
Our staff, right? So when it comes to me personally, right, through my progression through this my 36 years of coaching, I've placed a lot of value in and I've come to realize this and learn this over the years, but I put a lot of value in who I work for and who I work with. And as these guys can attest, it's hard to win games, and you're not going to win them all. And so who you put yourself around that you work with on a day in and day out basis is critical to your happiness. Because every day you're coming in and you're going to battle with these guys. You're trying to make a game plan, put the players in the best position they can be to succeed. And you want those guys that have your back, all right? They're good dudes and are grinders. And the staff that we have at Texas, right? It all starts with Coach Sarkisian and the culture he has developed with the assistant coaches, starting with Terry Joseph, our secondary coach, Blake Gideon, our safeties coach, Johnny Nansen, our linebacker coach, Kenny Baker, our D-line coach, quality control, our analyst, Brandon Hupert, Kenuto Hudson. All these guys are unbelievable people, unbelievable dudes. And it's a joy to go and work with these guys every day. And then
I love Jerry that he talks about culture, because those coaches, that they mean it. I mean, it's right. It's like you and I. If we didn't like each other, it'd be hellaciously hard to have a daily talk show talking about Longhorn football. It really would be, right, Blake? I mean, so I think that's ultra important, and I think that's something that they found. And I think it's incredibly important to reiterate at a time when Texas just lost a key member of that. Now, it's not on defense, it's a Shard choice. It's the other side of the ball. But that's why when you add a Mark Orfe, like Texas did 2 days ago, the Rutgers defensive back coach, we think is going to coach cornerbacks at Texas. It's important that they fit, right? And that these guys are at their best so they can coach the players. And that's part of culture too, and what Sark's created. It's not just the player culture, it's the coaching culture that bleeds down into it. And I love to hear a coach like Kwiatkowski talk about that, because you can tell he means it too. That's from the heart. He's been there, done that for 30-something years right now.
Okay, one of the comments, or a comment that we're getting a lot of, and people are wanting you to weigh in on it, Jerry, such as Greg Jackson here. He says, Crowell posted on X that he was canceling his official visit. We've also, Clint here, have y'all already touched on Crowell? We've had a lot of them, so I'm going to let you touch on Crowell.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I'll kind of tone down my thoughts a little bit on this, but look, the emotion of the decisions, young kid, right? Emotion of the decision. You probably wish somebody just been around him, just say, just chill out a little bit, man. I mean, just for a while, but a really talented player. And if Texas, look, if Tashard Choice was the only reason he was considering Texas, it's probably best that Texas won't eventually be his choice. And I say that because I talked to somebody this morning whose son is a running back at Texas. And this person asked their son last night, do you love the university? Yes. Do you love Austin? Yes. You love your head coach? Yes. You like the offensive scheme? Yes. He said, it'll take care of itself. Sark will hire a really good coach. It'll be all right. So there's two different ways people look at this stuff. And, young kids, the emotion of it comes out on social media, right? And, but again, one thing I've learned my years doing this, Bobby, is if that is the only reason you were interested in a school, it's probably best you're not at that school then, because it should be about more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And I think at the same time, I mean, they're 16 years old. And Crowell's an early grad, by the way. So he may even be younger. I think that it is interesting. The impact of Choice leaving in recruiting is not ideal. I'll just bluntly, it is not, because this was a really good, or we've lined it up, and I totally believe it is a really, really good year at running back in recruiting. Whether it's Javian Osborne, Xavier Crowell, Derek Cooper, Amari Latimer, KJ Edwards, whoever you want to mention there, Texas was in on the right guys at running back, in our opinion. Jerry and I talked about this. We agree with it. In that way, it is difficult because now you're going to have to overcome losing probably the primary conduit and recruiter for you, right? At Texas. So that makes it difficult. That being said, don't forget that Steve Sarkisian hasn't coached a year of football as a head coach and not had a 1,000-yard back. Okay. So it's not like a lot of those happened before Tashard Choice stepped on campus. So he's got something to sell there too, as well as a program. I think that they'll be fine, but I will admit it can be hurtful or harmful in recruiting to a degree. There will be some impact, and maybe Crowell is the one that it's with, Jerry, frankly. So we'll see.
I mean, again, we're covering these kids a long time, and I get it, but also I will say this: if that is the only reason coaches are going to come and go, and I know there's great relationships, I get it. We've all been through it. You've been through it as a player in your sports, but at the same time, sometimes you wish people around will just say, chill a little bit, just relax just a little bit. But again, we'll see what happens. But there's a lot of people like saying, hey, which running backs are going to leave Texas? I'm posing this question. Some people have been hitting me up on DMs and stuff. Is center backs are going to leave? He has a major knee injury. Where's he going to go? FSU? You going to go to FSU? Is that a dumpster fire right now? Where are you going to go? Florida has Jaden Ball. Where are you going to go? It's kind of like the Arch Manning should transfer stuff. It's easy to say it, but when you dive into it, where are you going to go? Jarrett Gibson going to go to Florida? They have Jaden Ball. Where kid's going to go? Sometimes you just got to go stay and compete.
Okay, well, we still have more to talk about, more questions to get to. But first, Bobby, I'm going to let you take this opportunity to let everyone know about Babbel.
Yeah, it's time to talk about Babbel, the extremely popular language learning app. Be a better you in 2025 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you learn how to speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by more than 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. More than 16 million people have already used Babbel. I've been using it to improve my Spanish. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/ontexas. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/ontexas. Spelled BABBEL.com/ontexas, babbel.com/ontexas. Rules and restrictions may apply. Join more than 16 million who are already using Babbel to improve their foreign language skills.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Improve your foreign language skills and then improve your pocketbook. Because sign up for something and you forget about it after the trial period ends, then you're charged month after month after month. The subscriptions are there, but you're just not using them. Don't worry, you're not alone. I do it. Everyone else does it too. In fact, 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused every single month. Thanks to Rocket Money, though, I can see all my subscriptions in one place, cancel the ones I'm not using anymore, and now I'm saving money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. They monitor your spending, help lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. And the subscriptions part is absolutely awesome. It's what I use it for. You see all of them in one place. You know exactly where your money's going. And for the ones you don't want anymore, they help you cancel them very, very easily. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when you use all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subs today. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Just go to rocketmoney.com/game on today. That's rocketmoney.com/game on. rocketmoney.com/GAMEON. All right, go ahead, Jerry.
Well, yeah, we need to address it. There's been a few comments that on Jonte Cook. Yeah, we're aware that, again, second arrest in a very short amount of time. And, it's, I don't know, you hope at some point somebody will shake themselves around them, and before it's way too late.
Yeah, arrested last night apparently in Grayson County. Is that right, Blake? I think you're the one that
Pottsboro.
Pottsboro County. Yeah. This one for, I think, a possession. This is the second time in less than a month, I think, that he's been put in jail, and this is just 1 month after losing his scholarship at Washington upon transfer. So if you're around and can lend somebody a hand, please do. We never know when that time is going to be or who it's going to be. But young people struggle. Put your arm around them if you can. Try to set them on the right path. That's all you can do, man. And sorry to see something like that happen. And sorry, man.
Hey, I want to bring something up, Bobby. This is actually an interesting question. Will NIL affect equality in the playing field in basketball more than football? Since some small schools may not have a football program, could they allocate more money to basketball instead? I actually had a conversation yesterday with somebody about this. And it's going to be conference to conference, is my understanding. So right now, from what I hear, like, there's going to be, you can allocate your money however you want, essentially, right? There's no percentage that has to be given to certain sports. Yesterday I was told that North Carolina wants to operate with a $6 million NIL budget in basketball, which would be top 2. But if that's going to happen, then that's going to have to be taken away from other areas.
Yeah. Yeah. So roughly 20 million is the figure, right? For major conference schools, if you want to participate. Okay. So that's essentially the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and Big 12. So of that 20 million, okay, Texas is probably going to put about 15 to 16 and a half into football. Another 2 for men's basketball, 2.5 for men's basketball, I think.
I think it's going to end up being 3.
Okay. So, and the rest will go down to baseball, women's basketball, volleyball, etc. The reality of it is some schools are not going to, and conferences are not going to opt into this.
That's right.
And if they don't opt in, they have to live by their NIL deals actually still being capped to fair market value. So I don't know what that's going to look like, frankly. And I think that we're guessing a little bit, but there will be teams like North Carolina, I can guarantee you Kansas isn't going to be beat out by anybody in basketball spending. So we'll see what that means. But I get it. But it'll put Bill Belichick in a precarious position if he doesn't have a $15 million cap and he's dealing with 12 or 13. It'll be interesting to see how he takes to that, because you don't want to put the one thing that you don't do in any sport with your coaches. You don't make them fight with one arm behind their back. You do that, you're in sad shape. That's not good. So we'll see what it all means and how it all goes.
Yeah, I think you'll see the one thing you'll see in basketball. Before we move on to something else, I actually have a little coaching carousel thing I want to throw out too for basketball for those that care. I think you're going to see for 1 or 2 players the lean from an NIL perspective into Nike or Adidas. I think that's what you're going to see with one or two players, your top two guys, your have-to-have guys. I think that's where you're going to see, because, I mean, it's already been a big part of basketball recruiting. I think there's going to be a lean there with your power Nike schools, your power Adidas schools, what have you. And that a little coaching care, a little for the guys that care about this stuff, because the basketball coaching carousel is going to get crazy before we move back to football. I'm watching out for Scott Drew to be linked with Indiana. And if that link becomes real, which I think it could, will McCaslin leave Tech, who's a damn good young coach, to go to Baylor? Watch that one. All right, moving on.
Interesting.
We both said interesting. Okay, we got some questions here that we need to get to. And let's start with this one from K-John. Let's go back over to football for a moment. Could you expand on why Sark would have to change his play calling if Trey has to come in for Arch?
Run game, in particular, would change a little bit, because Trey does not have. If Sark is going to run some zone read and some defined QB runs, that's number one. Number two is, look, Arch is pretty quick guy. Is Trey Owens a quick guy and going to be able to do the same quick game stuff? I don't know. You have any comment on that? Because you were the one speaking about that, Jerry.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think one thing you're going to see with Arch is more waggles, more rolls, more moving of the pocket, right? To use his athleticism. And I think Trey has got good feet, good quarterback feet, but more of a pocket guy. So the play calls around that may be a little different, right? I mean, the play calls with Quinn and Arch were different. I mean, Sark would call more plays. If Arch had been the full-time starting quarterback, he would call more waggles, more plays on the move using his feet than he would with Quinn. And I think it's similar there.
Quinn or Trey.
Yeah.
Quinn
exactly.
Quinn and Trey, from a movement standpoint, are somewhat similar. And to your point, and you're going to get Arch more outside the pocket.
Yep.
That's a good point. I agree with that, Jerry.
And before we get to some of these coaching questions, I want to get y'all's take on this one as well from Suave RP. He says, if Texas keeps losing players after 3 years, we'll never win a title. Most teams who have won titles have 4-year starters. Bobby, I'll let you start.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that, but you can still do it. I mean, what's happening right now is, like, for example, Penn State getting both getting their quarterback back and both running backs back. Huge for them next year. It was huge for what Ohio State did the previous year. Michigan did it with their offensive line the year before that, and J.J. McCarthy. And Blake Corm. To some degree, I agree with you, Suave. But I would say this: you want guys that have the opportunity to go early if they want to. And certain positions, you're just going to lose them no matter what. There's not going to be a true high-level edge rusher that's coming back. I mean, Jack Sawyer is good, but he's not a top 10 pick in the draft.
If he had been, he'd have been gone.
Yeah, if he had, I mean, so there are going to be certain guys that you just can't get for 4 years. We'll see.
Look, I would add this. Go back and look at Nick Saban's teams. Now, he had the most talented overtime roster, and he's the best coach we've ever seen in college football. He didn't always have – he had tons of 3-year guys that left every year. Georgia's 21 and 22 team, they had 3-year guys that left every year. So if you're going to recruit at that level, you're not going to have many years where you have just a bunch of 4-year guys. And they don't want that. I mean, Texas wants guys that are good enough to go pro after 3 years. They just got to put it together. But my thing is, it's going to be harder than ever to win a national championship. And I don't think there's going to be one formula to it, because you're going to have to win 3 and eventually 4 games to go get it done. But Alabama and Georgia, Your dominant teams in the last decade in college football plus had tons of 3-year guys.
Okay, and on a related note, one more before we get to some coaching questions from Chad Wilson. He says, does it feel like the next 2 years is our best chance to end the 20-year drought with the potential superstar at quarterback? I feel like we haven't had one since Colt left.
On paper, but it's harder than ever to win a title because you have to win 3 or 4 games. It's not the same as it used to be.
Does it feel like the next 2 years, though, is the best chance? I don't know about next year, but I could see 2020.
That's what a lot of people are saying, 26.
Yeah. Like next year, I think that until we see who else they get in the portal at receiver, Jerry, I'm mixed on it, right? Until I see if Cedric Baxter is truly back, I'm mixed on it. I think there are more questions right now going into 2025 than there were going into 2024 or 2023. That being said, I think Texas has a chance to be better at quarterback, which is the most important position on the field. We talked about that earlier this week in a video. I really think Texas has a chance to be better, in particularly, and I don't know if y'all saw this, but Quinn Ewers turned the ball over 17 times this year. That's averaging more than a turnover a game, whether that be via interception or fumbles. So I completed 65% of his passes. Fewer yards per attempt than in 2023. Now, I think that it's being proven that Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, along with Jordan Whittington, were a special group of receivers. So I want to say that. Whereas with Isaiah Bond out most of this year, Texas kind of didn't have that consistency from its receiver group. But I think Texas has a chance to be better at quarterback the next 2 years. So to your point, I think you're probably right. I will add, though, that Ohio State just won a national championship with Will Howard. So you don't have to have a great quarterback to win a national championship.
That's true.
If you have overwhelming talent.
Yeah.
And I think that Texas, and that's what happened with Alabama. I mean, you think A.J. McCarron was an overwhelming talent? Greg McElroy, an overwhelming talent? No. So we'll see how it goes.
All right, this next one's a super chat from Freelance Society. Some congratulations sound like they're in order. He says, yesterday my wife and I welcomed a new OTF family member to the world, Archie Gabriel Roberts. Wonder where we got the name from. Congratulations, Freelance
Congratulations, Dylan. Congrats, man. Gabriel, till Gabriel blows his horn. There we go. I love it. Good stuff. Congratulations, man.
That's awesome.
Happy for you.
Okay, let's see here. We had a lot of people join since we first started, so let's kind of rehash some news here. David Rawls says, "What's the word on Aaron Joe?"
He's from Lakeland, Florida, so another guy with Florida ties, and has been in the Atlanta area at Georgia Tech. So look, those Georgia and Florida ties, I think they're gonna keep coming up here as Texas settles into the SEC and Sark settles into his recruiting geography at the University of Texas. And I'm one that I'll beat the drum until the drum is no more. The more Texas recruits in Florida and Georgia along with Texas, the better and more talented they will continue to be. I like any hires that have connections, and Josh Dunson had connections in the Atlanta area. The two hires within that support staff both have ties to Atlanta and the state of Florida. And obviously, Aaron Joe was a Lakeland, Florida, Lake Gibson guy. Lakeland High has been the team there, maybe the best high school team of all time there years ago when Charlie Strong literally recruited 6 players into one of Urban Meyer's class there that went on and won 2 national titles. But Lake Gibson's put out a ton of players. So Aaron Joe's a Lakeland guy who's been in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. He was on a support staff at Alabama, But again, both of these hires have ties to Atlanta and the state of Florida. And for that, I say yay. That's very good for Texas.
Yeah. What Jerry's referring to overall here is that Aaron Jones, the general manager at Georgia Tech, was hired away by Texas. That somewhat being reported by Matt Zenitz of 24/7 Sports earlier today. Joe, the GM at Georgia Tech, going to work for Brandon Harris now, the GM at the University of Texas. This is the second major off-field hire by Brandon Harris this offseason. Joe being the second one. The first one, Jerry also mentioned Josh Brunson, the GM at Memphis, becoming the senior director of player personnel. So that is Josh Dunson, GM from Memphis, as well as Aaron Joe, GM at Georgia Tech, joining Brandon Harris and his staff there at Texas in support roles.
And we're going to talk the running back coach position a little bit more here momentarily. But first, Jerry, I need you to point your toes west and tell us about Tecovas.
I will do that. I have no problem doing that as long as I can read. And I think I still can. Anywhere worth going is worth going in. This says good. I'm changing the read. Tecovas great boots. Born in Texas in 2015, Tecovas are handcrafted with every stitch on point, like Vic Shaver's high post offense. Tecovas boots are made for a good time and a long time. I love the fact that they're already broken in for comfort right out of the box. And Tecovas makes it easy for anyone to find their favorite boot. With all kinds of sizes and styles, Tecovas are simply the best boot around. I really like that they can either be daily boots or you can feel dressed up with them. Right now, get 10% off at tecovas.com/Texas football, all caps, when you sign up for emails and texts. Again, that's 10% off at tecovas.com/Texas football, all caps. Tecovas, point your toes west. And again, I want to say I changed the read. Good boots, we're changing it to great boots.
Thank you, Jerry. And I also am going to let everyone know about Pure Hydration, one of my favorites. It's a plant-based hydrating electrolyte drink mix with no added sugar. It's natural, delicious, and convenient. It's the best way to keep you and your whole family hydrated without the artificial stuff. And it's made with clean ingredients, which means you stay healthy, you stay energized, but without the crash. It's doctor approved and safe for your entire family, from adults to kids ages 1 and up. And hydration is key to feeling your best, and Pure makes it easier than ever. I drink it every single morning to start my day, usually right here on Coffee and Football. In fact, I opened one right before we started. It tastes great. They offer 7 amazing flavors that you will love. It's also convenient. You can take it with you anywhere. They're going to ship you a bag that contains 14 on-the-go packets. You dump them in a bottle of water, shake it up, and you're all set. Hydration goes beyond just drinking water. It's about replenishing the electrolytes we lose through sweat, sleep, alcohol, and daily activities. Water alone isn't enough to do the job. That's why you need to try Pure, the electrolyte drink mix that tastes as amazing as it makes you feel. And for OTF listeners, they're offering 20% off your first order. Stay hydrated and feel your best by visiting purehydration.com/OnTexas. Use promo code OnTexas at checkout. That's purehydration.com/OnTexas and use code OnTexas for 20% off your first order.
Hey, real quick, while we were doing those reads, I looked at the quarterbacks in the NFL Combine. You want to know what's truly a sign of the times in college football? And I think people probably could have guessed it. 15 quarterbacks were invited to the NFL Combine. 12 transferred at some point during college. So 12 of the 15 in the Combine were transfers. That's a wild number.
And
that's the sign of the times in college football.
And 5 of those 15 were from the SEC.
Yeah.
By the way.
And by the way, and one of them, for the recruiting junkies out there, one of the quarterbacks on this list, and I'm going to make a list after the show. I'm going to go on TexasFootball.com and make a list of the kids in the Combine, what high school they went to in Texas, the guys from Texas. Seth Hennigan, Memphis's quarterback, got invited to the Combine. That's the son of the head coach at Denton Ryan, Coach Hennigan. Not a highly recruited kid at all out of high school. Actually, they had to find him a home at Memphis. So congrats to him on, maximizing what you got, man, because he was not highly recruited. And here he sits in a group at the NFL Combine with a lot of these guys who are very highly recruited. Him and Curtis Rourke were probably the two that were of the 15 quarterbacks that were the least recruited quarterbacks out of high school.
Bobby, Joe, we got some people wanting y'all's opinion on this. Ralph Neely, for example. Jerry, let's talk possible running back coaches. He's wondering about the Ohio State running back coach. Casey says, who's on y'all's wish list for running back coach to replace Tashard Choice?
So what'll be interesting is, Bobby, is does Sark go? Tashard Choice was a former NFL running back, right? That could talk it, not just talk the talk, he walked the walk. So does Sark go in that direction again? That's going to be the big question.
Because Rashad Samples is the guy that everybody wants to know about, Jerry. Young guy, young coach, is at Oregon currently, the son of Reggie Samples, the head coach at Duncanville. Is Texas going to go that direction? We don't know at this time. And whether or not Samples, I'm sure he'll be willing to listen. He listened to the Dallas Cowboys, right? So he's going to be willing to listen. But is that really the direction that Sark wants to go? We'll find out. Stan Drayton, the former Texas running backs coach, has been hired by Penn State after they struck out on DeMarco Murray, the running backs coach at Oklahoma. You could also look at guys like Kevin Smith, the former Central Florida running back that was an early round pick of the Detroit Lions. He's now at Ole Miss. What's the guy's name at Nebraska, Jerry?
Yeah,
that we know has some ties to Sark, etc. There are a number of directions Texas could go. The one thing that I will say about Sark is it could be a big name guy like Rashad Samples, who has this MO, so to speak, of being a name recruiter, or he could pull a name out of a hat that you don't know. Nobody knew Mark Orfe's name before he became the cornerbacks coach at Texas. Nobody knew who Kenny Baker even was or existed until Steve Sarkisian pulled his name. With Baker, I think everything's gone really, really well. And nobody knew who Chris Jackson was. So a big name running backs coach is nice. It's not necessary. Sark has proven that time and time again. And one of the things I do think that Sark likes is I think he likes his coaches with a little bit of experience, but he may not go hire a 60-year-old assistant to coach a position. That doesn't seem to be his MO. He wants the 35-year-old that can still connect, 45-year-old that still can connect with the college-age student. And we'll see what that means. I'm not worried about who Texas hires there. I'm pretty confident Steve Sarkisian has an idea of what he wants to, or what he will do. If he goes for a big name, I think it's Samples. That's it.
Yeah, I think it could very well come down to what is does Sark want to hire a guy that played the position in the NFL or has coached the position in the NFL again?
Yep.
If he does, obviously it wouldn't be Samples. If he moves away from that, it could very well be Samples. So we'll see what Sark decides on.
And it's my understanding Samples is being moved to wide receivers coach anyways.
Co-C at Oregon potentially.
Yeah, at Oregon potentially.
Yeah, potentially.
So, there's that to be considered as well. Right? Chris Gilbert is the name you and I tossed around yesterday, Jerry. He spent a year, I think, as the running backs coach at North Texas. He, of course, is special assistant to the head coach right now for Steve Sarkisian. I don't know if Sark likes him more in the recruiting realm than in the coaching realm. We'll have to wait and see.
And there's also the other piece to this. Look, Tashard Choice had some. We talk about his relationships with his running backs and recruiting, but he was potent in Atlanta and Central and Southwest Corridor of Florida. So there's two different types of recruiting we're talking about. There's a guy who can recruit in the state of Texas, or do you try to look for somebody who has similar ties to Tashard Choice in Atlanta and Florida? Because Texas is making a lot of headway in Georgia and Florida right now. And does that affect that hire? We'll see. I think those are kind of the three things I'm watching with this hire. Is one, is Sark going to stick with played the position in the NFL or coached it in the NFL? Because then that's different from talking the talk to walking the walk in recruiting. And you lost a guy who was really good recruiting in Georgia and in Central. Remember, Tashard Choice got Texas started in Florida in their recruiting. So you lost a key recruiter. People just talk about the running back position. When I think of Choice, I think about the areas he recruited and how that really helped Texas in the SEC. So there's different angles to all this when we talk recruiting as well. So I'm very interested to see which direction Sark goes.
Carlos Lachlan is the running backs coach at Ohio State. He's only been there 1 year. The previous running backs coach at Ohio State moved to Michigan, Tony Alford, and that's a big name, similar to a Tashard Choice that has been around for a while and has a big name as a running backs coach and has had success at multiple places. We'll see what that means.
All right, we can get to some more questions here. And let's do this one. Another one from Chad Wilson. Does Sark have to win a national championship at Texas to be considered an all-time coach at UT? I figure he has 3 to 4 more years left at Texas. Hard to say anywhere longer than 9 to 10 years anymore.
The answer is yes to the first part of the question.
No doubt.
Yeah, I mean, the two guys that you put up on the wall right now at Texas are DKR and Matt Brown because they won national championships. If he wants to be considered an all-time great at Texas, doesn't mean he can't win a lot of games, but you got to win a national championship to be considered great or an all-time coach at Texas, in my opinion. And I don't know about the 3 or 4 more years left. And I think Sark he's getting paid $10 million a year to do this. I mean, so I feel pretty confident that he could be here well beyond 3 to 4 more years.
There you go. And Jerry, a question for you from David Keith Williams. David says, what do you think about Georgia literally having 3 of the top 4 linebackers in the 2026 recruiting class?
And I think he's talking about state of Georgia. And I've talked about this on the show before. That state is absolutely loaded at linebacker. Last year, they were loaded on the D-line. I think they had – I got to go back and see what the final count was. And it's why Craig Hobart mentioned earlier, I think Georgia is probably the top state right now for high school football. And it doesn't mean numbers because Florida and Texas have bigger population, but they seem to have every single position covered in that state every single year. And Florida and Texas may have a position where they don't, but that state is loaded at linebacker in 26. I saw 2 of those guys at Grayson, Atkinson, and Anthony Davis when I went through there last year. I saw some of those guys at a regional track meet last year as well that went just driving through the state on the way down to Brunswick, Savannah, and on into Florida to see Jamie French. I mean, last year it was D-line. They may have had 25, 26 D-linemen, interior D-linemen signed Power 4 out of one state last year. That's an absurd number for their population in that state. They are just loaded at linebacker. Will they have 3 of the top 4 ranked linebackers in the country at the end of the day? Probably not. Somebody's going to jump up there. But the kid at Gainesville committed to USC and Tyler Atkinson will probably remain 2 of those. But I think I could see a scenario where they have 3 of the top 6 or 7. And still, that's unbelievable for one state. I mean, that state's just loaded with talent.
King Me says, with 14 now going to the NFL Combine, is Texas still considered the exception and not the rule?
What do you mean by that? I think is my first question is a year ago, they were the surprise team. Now I think you do it 2 years running. It speaks to development. And it speaks to, look, I wrote this morning and I'll say it again. development and players. Steve Sarkisian, really good offensive mind. Pete Kwiatkowski, really good defensive coach. Those two coaches went 5-7 in year one at Texas. Okay? You're only as good as the players you coach. And that is the one thing with Steve Sarkisian that I really, as much as anything he does, including play calling, is his attention to talent acquisition. I mean, I will be the first person to say that I was a little concerned his first year. He didn't really add anyone when he got to Texas in his first recruiting class. He got lucky with Xavier Worthy and added him. But and that's that after he got here after Alabama won the national championship. So I was a little concerned. I was like, what the hell is going on? You know, is he going to step up? He did the next year. And then how he closed with Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, that crew, went and got Quinn Ewers in the portal. Ever since that time period, it's been nothing but up. And so there's no more exception. I think Texas, I don't know if they'll have 10 plus combine invites every year, because some of that has to do with how many guys you take in the portal and what your rotation of guys is, you know, et cetera. But I don't see them not having 8 guys in a year as long as Steve Sarkisian's the head football coach at Texas. I don't see any way, right? Especially not for the next 3 years. I'll put it that way. As long as they retain players that they've signed well enough.
This is a good question from Isaiah Stewart that just popped up. Can I ask this one, Blake?
Yeah, go ahead. Definitely.
Bobby, what's your thought on that one?
Well, you gotta say the question, Jerry.
Well, Isaiah Stewart, in your opinion, what's the biggest area y'all seen Sark grow as a coach?
Since he took over at Texas, I guess.
Yeah, let's start there.
It's a good question. While Bobby's thinking about it, I'm gonna throw one out there. I'm gonna go from a recruiting perspective because the guy had been coaching football a long time. When he first got to Texas, so he's a fiery competitor, but he's a laid back California guy. And in recruiting in Texas, people are very aggressive earlier on kids. So I think like in that 2022 class, he really, really took a measured approach to it and maybe didn't push some of the guys a little bit. And a couple of those guys might have drifted because they weren't sure how much they really wanted. I think while he's kept his, which I think is the correct approach, the long game in recruiting, I think he's accelerated his messaging to make sure they're around and the kids absolutely know that Texas wants them, just that their process is different. I don't know if that makes sense, Bobby, but I think that's one of the shifts in recruiting I've seen as Sark has grown into this role in Texas, because recruiting here, with how aggressive people are when they come into Texas, is maybe a little different. So I think he's while he's kept his approach, with I think is the correct approach, the long game in recruiting, I think he's changed his messaging up early on with some kids a little bit.
I think that's fair, because recruiting on the West Coast as a head coach is fundamentally different than in the state of Texas. And frankly, it was he was going up against Jimbo Fisher in particular, who liked to put kids in a hot box and get them to commit. And that may have been his first time experiencing that as a head coach, because at USC, UCLA couldn't really do that. Washington, didn't really do that. Alabama, maybe he didn't see it as much because he wasn't the head coach. I think maybe the one thing that I've seen Sark grow is his confidence in himself a little bit.
This is a good one by Leo, by the way.
Yeah, Gronin is a
great one.
Interior line, D-line recruiting. Yeah, that's possible.
That's a great. That's actually spot on, by the way.
Yeah, but my take on this is I think he's grown in his confidence in what works and what doesn't work. he did some things like you can't force round pegs into square holes. I thought his first year at Texas, he may have been forced to do that a little bit, but he also did it some with Casey Thompson at quarterback. When he didn't have the offense to do exactly what he wanted to do. I thought that he called, and I know people will say, well, we didn't have a great offense in 2024. The answer is you're right. Texas did not have a great offense, but they had a great team because he called the offense to win games. And so I think he's grown in confidence in how to win games. Because don't forget, his moniker when he took the job at Texas was 7-win Steve. A lot of people said that. USC fans told Texas fans that. Washington fans, because he never got over that hump. Well, the last 2 years, he's won 12 and 13 games. So he's grown as a coach, and I think he's grown because he's calling games to win games now, more and more, in my opinion, as opposed to, set the world on fire and score 49.
And by the way, for those that think that Sark's nickname wasn't real, that's what it was by those fan bases. Just like when Rick Barnes came to Texas, Clemson and ACC coaches called, or fans, not coaches, fans call him first round Rick. Yeah. Rick Barnes, first round Rick. That was his nickname amongst ACC fans and Clemson fans, was first round Rick. Yep. And he's gotten over that hump.
All right, guys, before we get to our last few questions here, I'm going to let everyone know about Mint Mobile. And I don't know about y'all, but I like keeping my money where I can see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers also seem to like keeping my money too. After years of overpaying for wireless, I finally got fed up with those crazy high wireless bills, the bogus fees, and the free perks that actually cost more in the long run, and I switched over to Mint Mobile. Now I get to save a whole lot of money, and you can save a whole lot of money too, because you can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month, and they all come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. Bring your own phone number, of course, your contacts, and everything else as well. Ditch that overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for just $15 a month. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/OnTexas. That's mintmobile.com/OnTexas. An upfront payment of $45 is required for the 3-month 5-gig plan, which is equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Oh, David Rawls with a great one. It's gone.
Wait a second, Jerry.
Jerry, the semifinal, Steve.
Nah.
That's a good one.
All right. Special thanks to our sponsor. Today's episode being brought to you by BKCW Insurance. All season long, you've heard us talk about how Longhorn-owned BKCW helps you escape the insurance trap. You know the drill. Renewal time rolls around. You scramble for quotes, and your business ends up stuck with a higher price. BKCW breaks that cycle. They'll dive deep into your past claims, assess your risk, and deploy tools to help make you and your company safer. They'll also give you competitively priced options and what's available. If you want to learn more about what BKCW can provide you and your business, go to bkcw.com or send an email, info@bkcw.com, to get started and get the support you deserve today. 512-250-5055. That's 512-250-5055. info@bkcw.com.
I want to give proper credit for that hilarious. So it's Leo. Now he's semifinal, Steve. You know you're trending up when you go from 7-win Steve to semifinal Steve. You're trending up.
Let's make him national champion, Steve. How about that?
Yeah, that'd be a lot better. No one can argue with that at all. All right, Connor Vaughn here with the question says, sorry if this has been answered, but is Jonah Williams starting for baseball right now, or is he still nursing an injury? Connor, no, he's not starting. He is still nursing an injury, but I saw your question earlier, so I reached out to a couple of folks to get the latest, and it sounds like he's now doing some light throwing, which is an improvement from a week or so ago when when throwing was off limits. So he's improving, just slow and steady. And we got time for just another question or two. We've been talking about semifinals, Steve, so let's keep on for a moment. Archmania says, is Sark migrating more from a Carroll-type coach to a Saban-type coach over time?
I don't think so. I think that Pete Carroll was a hell of a recruit. I mean, like Nick Saban ruled recruiting for a decade and a half at Alabama. The team that ruled recruiting before that was USC. I mean, what did they have, like 4 top number 1 classes in the early 2000s, Jerry?
Yeah.
I think that he's trying to define himself as much as anything. And maybe that's what he takes away from both Carroll and Nick Saban. You got to do what's true to you. Right.
You can't, and you have to be genuine. You can't fake this. If you try to be Nick Saban, you're going to fail. And Sark's smart enough to realize that. You can't, look, there's a former Texas coach that tried to copy Urban Meyer, but that wasn't genuine and it was going to fail. You have to be who you are and mold everything around who you are. And I think Sark does that. I think he's not Pete Carroll. He's not Nick Saban. He is Steve Sarkisian. I think he's taken a lot of what Pete Carroll he kind of liked about Pete Carroll and learned from Pete Carroll, and maybe that fits him more so. If you try to be Nick Saban, man, that's a slippery slope. You're going to fail. That's a hard thing to be.
Okay, this will be our last one for today. And earlier you were talking about a focus on Georgia and Florida, Jerry. But Jackson, when it comes to recruiting, Jackson wants to know, are we going to leave some stones unturned by mainly recruiting those states?
I doubt they do in the state of Texas, Jackson. They will elsewhere. I mean, look, I've advocated recruiting St. Louis forever. St. Louis and Kansas City are easy targets for the state of Texas and the University of Texas. But you'll miss some guys in Louisiana. I'll be honest, northern Louisiana is an area where Blake Gideon recruited a little bit. Now, Terry Joseph has hit up that area, but Shreveport, Monroe, I mean, Texas still recruiting Dylan Berryman, don't get me wrong, the defensive tackle out of northern Louisiana. But there are going to be certain areas that if you lose coaches, you will likely lose ends and miss on some players. So that's just bound to happen. It doesn't matter whether it's Tashard Choice leaving or Blake Gideon or whoever. It seems to happen that way.
Okay, well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by BK.
No, it's not the end.
Oh, Blake.
What you got?
I got to give away some tickets here.
Oh, that's right.
Courtesy of Adam Lowy and Lowy Law Firm, 4 tickets to tomorrow's Kentucky Texas basketball game. Email the answer. You guys go ahead and put it up. The first person to answer correctly is given 4 tickets to tomorrow's Texas Kentucky basketball game. Email ontexasfootball@gmail.com. All right. What is the record? Here's the question. First person gets it right. 4 tickets, Kentucky basketball game. What is the record for number of draft picks in an NFL draft for the Texas Longhorns in a single year? What year was it and how many? What year was it and how many? Send that in to ontexasfootball@gmail.com. Adam Lowe and his firm will give you guys 4 free tickets to tomorrow's Texas basketball game against Kentucky. Please make sure you're going to the game, by the way, to win these tickets. I know a lot of people try to guess the trivia question, but don't actually go. We want people in the stands tomorrow rooting on Rodney Terry and the Longhorns.
There you go. Good stuff. And thanks to Adam for that. Also, thanks to BKCW, Babel, Cure Hydration, Rocket Money, and Mint Mobile for sponsoring today's show. Bobby, what do you have later today right here on Texas Football?
1 o'clock, Jerry, Jeff Howe, and Rod Babers joining for the Longhorn live stream. You've got your Texas baseball edition going at 4 o'clock, previewing the weekend's games. Blake, that should be fun. Tomorrow we got the Saturday conversation, recruiting news and notes. Jerry's got some stuff to talk about with folks in that regard, as well as if there's any further fallout of Tashard Choice taking the Detroit Lions job as it relates to recruiting. We'll talk about that and more all weekend long, as well as update you. CJ is getting ready to go to the Combine, by the way. I forgot to mention that to you guys. Going to the Combine tomorrow. So, all right, not tomorrow, but later this month. All right, that'll do it. Thanks, Blake. Thank you, Jerry. Glad we could do this again this week. Fun stuff.
That's right. Be sure to head on over on TexasFootball.com, become a member for $49.95 for a full year using promo code OTFOG. Again, OTFOG will get you a full year at OnTexasFootball.com for $49.95 because we can't be on video 24/7. So be sure to check that out and join in on the great discussion and the amazing community over there. Well,
hey, I know Jerry can be absent-minded, and he said when we started that he remembered Valentine's Day. Jerry, you got to remember Valentine's Day, my man.
No. I said my script was written long ago. I'm good.
He's got it covered.
Yeah.
Well,
everyone have a great out there.
Yeah. A great Valentine's Day, a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday morning. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll